Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to explain about the data types, an important topic in C programming. See, data, let us see what do you mean by data. So data means a raw facts or figures or some numbers. That means a data may represent some raw facts or some figures or some numbers. We are using different types of data, and then whenever we are using data, we are not using the data as it is. We need to store the data in some variables. That means we are using variables to hold these different types of data. For example, say I will say let x is equal to say 10. So this is one type of, that means here 10 is the data or number that I am storing in the variable x. Similarly, so I will say, so average, so then average is equal to, let us say 8.5. That means here now this is one more type of data. Okay, and this data I'm storing the variable called average. Here I have the given name as average variable name. Okay, so next I may say one more type of data. So let us say grade is equal to A. That means the grade of some student. So this is one more type of data that I am storing in the variable called grade. So one more, let us take. Now this is one more type of data, so that I am storing in the variable called name. Okay, so here this x, average, grade, name are the variables. In these variables, we may use different types of variables. This type of data is called integer data. It doesn't have any floating point number, so decimal point number. So this is floating point number, so it's having some fractional part and as well as integer part, and is a single character type of data, and it is having a set of characters called string type of data. So that means normally we may use any type of data, but what type of data we are storing in the variable, that is not known to the compiler. Because since compiler don't know what type of data that user is using, it doesn't know how much memory to be allocated. Because in my previous video I told variables are nothing but the name given to some address of memory location. So when I want to use some variables, why, for what purpose we are using variables? To store some data. How much memory we need to allocate? That is the question for the compiler. So data type is the concept through which we are informing to the compiler, saying that what type of data we are using. Okay, so data type gives us the information to the compiler about what type of data we are using. Okay, so that is what the data type. Hope you people understood the type of data. Thus, based on type of the data, our compiler will allocate memory. Okay, for example, say for suppose if I am using integer value variable, if I say I am storing integer value in so and so variable, compiler will allocate 2 byte or 4 byte depending upon the number of bit machine. Similarly, if I inform compiler that I am storing some floating point number in the some variable, then it reserves 4 bytes or it allocates 4 bytes of memory. Suppose if I inform that I am using single character in a variable, it will allocate only 1 byte of memory, 1 byte of memory. Similarly, if I say character string, so how many number of characters accordingly it will allocates. So this through data type, we are informing compiler that what type of data we are storing in the variable, and accordingly our compiler will reserve and allocates the memory. Now, the data types are broadly categorized into 3 types. Okay, so data types are broadly categorized into 3 types. One is called primitive data type. Primitive data type. This is also called as fundamental data type. Also called as built-in data types. All are same. Okay, so then we are, second type is called user defined data type. User defined data type. The third one is derived data type. Okay, so these are the three different types of data. So we'll call this as a primitive data type. These two we'll call as a non-primitive also. So thus we can say non-primitive data further divided into user-defined data type, derived data type. Now we'll see what we mean by primitive data types. See, primitive data types are the data types which can directly understood or directly recognized or directly interpreted by the compiler. That means compiler know that. So that's all the primitive data. So which are the primitive data types? So int, char, float, double, and finally void. So these are the 5 primitive data types that compiler can identify or recognize directly. Okay, so these are the primitive data types. So later will come one by one. So now before that, so next user defined data. As the name itself explains, these are the data types defined by the users. Okay, so which are those? Say like class, structure, union, enums. Okay, so then finally type def. So these are the user defined data types. That means how, suppose, assume these are the built-in data types. So these 5 are also not enough for our requirement. So we can define how we want based on the requirement. We can define our own data types. That's what these user defined data types. Okay. So then derived data types are the data types. So which are derived from the existing data type. Okay. So which are those? Functions, arrays, pointers, reference. Okay, so these are the 4 derived data types. Okay, again, derived data types are the data types which are derived from the existing primitive data types. Okay, so these are the different data types. Now let us see these 5 primitive data types one by one. Okay. So now let us discuss what is int. So int is a keyword. Okay, int is a keyword used to represent integer data type. Okay, so integer data. Okay, this is used to represent what type of data type? Integer type of data. That's a whole number data type. Okay, so this int may be the signed integers. That means which is having some plus or minus signed integer, or it may be unsigned integer. Unsigned means always positive only. Okay, and this may be what? Short int, or it may be long int. So that means we are having 4 variations of int. Okay, or maybe combination of this also. Okay, the size, that means whenever if I say this variable, if it declare any variable as an integer variable, then our compiler will allocate 4 bytes of memory if your machine is 64-bit machine. Okay, so for 4 bytes of machine or 4 bytes of memory it will allocate. See, size of the integer, size of the floating point, size of the double, this keeps varying based on the number of bit machines. Okay, it is 64-bit machine, 32-bit machine, so like that it keeps varying. So now the 4 bytes, generally take 4 bytes. So now if it is 4 bytes, and if you are using what? Only the signed int, so then the range is between -2147 48, then 3648 to +2147 483647. This is the range of the integer. Okay, so this is the range of integer. Suppose if it is unsigned, then it is 0 to 4294 967 295. This is for the unsigned integer. This are okay. Now, format specifier of integer is what? %d. That means whenever we know that whenever we are writing the program, in most of the programs we are using variables. Okay. So whenever we are using variables, we need to specify what type of data we are storing in that variable. So suppose if I am storing integer type of value, integer values in the variable, we need to declare such variable as int. For example, say int x. That means this is the message we are giving to the compiler saying that x is a variable in which I am storing some integer value. I don't know what is that integer value. That integer value is storing. So whenever we are using integer, we need to use this format specifier %d. Okay. So now what and all the things you should know. What is the keyword we need to use? What is the format specifier we have to use? Okay, if you remember these two, we can write the program. Okay, the range known because size of the integer we can know by using the size of operator. Okay, it doesn't know. But so these two things we should know. Okay, int is a keyword to represent integer variable, and format specifier used for this one is %d. Okay, so now similarly character. So character is simpler. Okay, char. So char is again the keyword in order to indicate that I am storing some character, single character in a variable. For example, char, say grade. Okay, so that means here grade is the variable name in which I am storing a character type of value. Okay, that is the meaning of this one. So this is a keyword. Whenever you are using character variable, you have to use you have to declare that variable as a using keyword char, and format specifier is %c. %c is the format specifier. Again here also we are having signed integer and unsigned integer, and for this whether it is a 32-bit machine, whether it is 64-bit machine, 128 machine, always it will occupies 1 byte of memory for one character. For one character it occupies 1 byte. 1 byte means how much? 8 bit. 1 byte means 8 bit. So 2 to the power of 8 is equal to what? 256. So if it is unsigned character, range is from 0 to 255. Suppose if it is signed, then it is at minus 128 to plus 127. So this is the range. Okay. So next comes the floating point. So floating point. So float is the keyword used to represent floating point, a single precision floating point. Okay, so whenever we are using a value of floating point value, that means a fractional value in a variable, then we need to declare such variable using the keyword called float. Okay, so format specifier for float is %c. %c, and again it occupies 4 bytes of memory. 4 bytes of memory. Okay, so this is about what? Floating point. And the floating point range. Floating point range is up to 1.2 to exponential minus 38 to plus 1 plus, okay, plus 1.2 exponential 38. Okay, this is the range of, so this is 3.4 exponential 38. That is the range in case of 4-bit. Okay, so now this is not %c, this is %f. So whenever we are using floating point variable, we have to use format specifier as %f, and it occupies 4 bytes. This is the range of the floating point numbers. Okay, so then next comes double. So this double, whenever we want even the lesser than this range and more than that positive range, that means even we want more than this range of number, that means when we want to represent two small number or two big numbers, then we go for double. That means whenever single precision floating point is not enough for our requirement, so then we have to go for double precision numbers. For at that time we go for the double data type. So again, double is the keyword which will indicate that we are storing double type of value in the variable. So format specifier for this is %ld, and it occupies 8 bytes in our memory. Okay, so generally we are not using that one. Most frequently used data types in our program is one is integer, character, floating point. So rarely we will use. Okay, so finally lastly we come to the what? Void. So in general, the meaning of void means nothing. Void means what? Nothing. Sometimes what happens, we know we need to use some numbers or some data we need to use, but at that time we are not sure that what type of data we are using, but we know that we are using some data. but we don't know what type of, we are not sure till now whether we may use integer, we may use floating point, we may use double, but we are not sure. Okay, but we know that we need to use some data, we need to store some space. So for that, what we do, we simply declare that variable as a void. So it indicates that is not having any value, okay. So there is no format specify this. So but now you can ask the question, when to use it. Okay, it can be used in three situations. In one, as a return value, in case of functions, and it is used in pointers. Okay, let's say void pointers, we'll say. So again, in detail we'll discuss in the pointers concept. Okay, and then it can be used as a function argument. That means it is used in function parameters or arguments. Okay, these are the three situations where we are using void. Okay, so this is about the data types. Okay, so for summary is, whenever we are using any variable in our program, first we need to declare that variables. While declaring, we need to inform compiler that what type of data what type of data we are storing in that variable. Okay, so the different types is what? Majorly we are using int, char, float, double, void, and all these are the what? Keywords. So hope you people understood. So if you have any questions, please write it in the comments. Thank you. Thanks for watching.